Tell me, what becomes of justice when the guilty live longer than the innocent? The war was over, the blood had dried, the posters of missing resistance fighters faded under the cold Belgian rain. And yet, in the ruins of a country returning to life, a name still whispered through cracked alleyways, courtrooms, and the memories of survivors. Robert Jan Vermeulen. Not a soldier at the front, not a man forced by circumstance, but someone who chose collaboration, who embraced it. While others feared the Gestapo, he worked with them. While parents hid their children from Nazi raids, he helped arrange those raids. His story does not begin with a gunshot or a dramatic escape. It begins with small decisions made long before the first tank rolled into Belgium. Decisions that would shape the fate of hundreds. This is not a tale of battlefield heroics. It is a slow-motion betrayal, one that ended not in handcuffs or a firing squad, but in comfort and old age. To understand Vermeulen, we must go back to Belgium before the war, to a country divided by language, identity, and politics, born on April 5, 1911. He was raised in a world where nationalism was rising and extremist ideologies were becoming increasingly seductive. Vermeulen became involved with Flemish nationalist movements early in life. At first, it was ideology. Then it became power. He joined the VNV, Vlaams Nationaal Verbond, a Flemish nationalist party that later aligned with the Nazis. As the years passed, his views hardened. He saw the German occupation not as an invasion, but as an opportunity. When the Wehrmacht marched into Belgium in May 1940, many froze in fear. Vermeulen did not. He stepped forward. Within months, he had embedded himself deep within the Nazi intelligence structure. He was not a passive collaborator. He actively worked for the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, one of the most feared branches of the Nazi apparatus. Vermeulen did not simply follow orders. He became a hunter. He helped identify, track, arrest, interrogate, and dismantle resistance operations across Belgium. Some collaborators simply supplied names. Vermeulen helped build full intelligence networks around those names. Families were torn apart. Secret meeting places were exposed. Underground offices vanished into prisons where screams were the last sounds they ever made. He was involved in multiple murders, including the killings of civilians suspected of supporting resistance fighters. He was not driven by survival. He was driven by ideology, ambition, and the authority the Nazis allowed him to wield. This was a man who walked freely into houses where people hid in cellars and walked out knowing they would never return home. Belgium suffered deeply under German occupation. Food was scarce, fear was constant, and betrayal became deadly. The Nazi occupation relied heavily on local collaborators because they knew the language, the culture, the streets. Vermeulen became one of their most valuable assets in the Flemish region. He led anti-resistance operations in Leuven, Brussels, and surrounding areas, often helping coordinate raids and arrests that ended with execution or deportation. The most tragic part was that his victims were not abstract enemies. They were Belgians like him. They were neighbors, students, teachers, and workers who resisted a foreign occupier. Some fought with guns, others with printed leaflets, secret letters, or whispered warnings. All of them were hunted by men like Verbalin. By 1944, the tides of war had changed. Allied forces were pushing toward Belgium. Resistance groups gained strength, and collaborators were beginning to panic. Some burned documents, others tried to switch sides, some fled entirely. But Verbalin had already earned a reputation for cunning. As Germany collapsed, he escaped. He disappeared from Belgium like a shadow at dusk, leaving behind files full of names and households that would never fully recover from what he'd done. When the war ended, Belgium demanded accountability. War trials began. Evidence was collected, testimonies were given. Survivors told stories of interrogation, torture, and betrayal. And Verbalin Hansen was tried twice. In 1947, a Belgian court sentenced him to death in absentia. Not one, but 2 death sentences. But the courtroom remained empty. No guards were present to take him away. No executioner was waiting. No justice had arrived, because Verbalin was already hundreds of miles away in Austria.
Austrian post-war politics were complicated. The country claimed victimhood under Nazi rule, but in reality it sheltered thousands of former Nazi officials and collaborators. Verbalin settled there under his real name. He was not in hiding. He lived openly. He found support among far-right sympathizers and individuals in the Austrian state who believed anti-communist intelligence was more important than punishing fascist crimes. While Belgium demanded extradition, Austria refused. Instead of prison, Verbalin gained employment. Reports later revealed that the Austrian intelligence services used him during the Cold War. A war criminal had become a paid informant, protected by the very government that should have arrested him. Meanwhile, in Belgium, families waited. Survivors gave testimony. Some kept newspaper articles about his trial folded in drawers for decades, hoping to one day see his capture announced. But year after year passed with no progress. Belgium issued warrant after warrant. Austria responded with silence, technicalities, excuses. More than once, reporters asked if he feared prosecution. Verbalin responded calmly. He denied wrongdoing, claimed his actions were political, insisted he never directly killed anyone. In the 1960s, Austrian courts finally agreed to review his case. After thousands of pages of evidence, including documented testimonies of resistance victims, the judges delivered their ruling. Not enough proof to convict. The families of the murdered called it an insult. They said justice had been treated like paperwork. The Belgian government said the truth was ignored in favor of convenience. It was not that the evidence didn't exist. It was that no one wanted to act. In 1965, Verbalin walked out of the courtroom a free man. He was no longer a fugitive. He was legally untouchable. While former Nazis across Europe were still being hunted, Verbalin went home to his apartment, cooked his own dinner, and slept in peace. He even wrote books attempting to portray himself as a patriot, not a traitor. There was no remorse, no apology, just revision and denial. The years turned into decades in Belgium. Resistance memorials were built.
streets were renamed after those who died fighting. Children and grandchildren grew up hearing stories passed down like curses. Your grandfather was arrested because a collaborator pointed him out. His name was Verbalin. But for the man responsible, there was no prison, no trial, no execution. The only punishment he ever faced was aging. He lived quietly in Vienna, growing old while the people he helped destroy remained frozen in time, never given the chance to age with him. In 1980, at the age of 82, Robert Jan Verbalin died, not in chains, not in front of a firing squad, not even in fear. He died peacefully in a hospital bed, his final breath gentle, his punishment non-existent. His death sentence had never been carried out. His victims never saw justice. History did not brand him a villain in a courtroom. Time simply passed until his story ended on its own, and that is perhaps the deepest wound of all. Not that a traitor existed, but that he succeeded in escaping justice. This story is not about revenge. It is not about glorifying punishment. It is about truth, memory, and the painful reality that justice is not always delivered the way we expect it to be. When we talk about World War II, we often focus on the heroes and the iconic villains who paid for their crimes. But history is also filled with stories like this. Stories where the guilty walk free, where legal systems fail, where political interests outweigh moral responsibility. That is why remembering Verbalin matters. Not to give him importance, but to give importance to what was lost.
Because justice does not only exist in courtrooms. Justice exists in memory. Justice exists when a story like this is told accurately, without myth, without exaggeration, without rewriting. When we speak the truth about what happened, we prevent those who escape punishment from escaping history. Verbalin may have avoided prison, but he could not erase what he did. His deeds are documented, his victims are remembered, his name is preserved not as a hero, not as a patriot, but as a warning! The legacy of Robert Jan Verbalin teaches us something uncomfortable. Justice delayed can become justice denied, but silence is the greatest betrayal of all! If we stop telling stories like this, if we forget the names of those harmed and those responsible, then history truly repeats. Every time a society chooses silence over accountability, someone like Verbalin slips through the cracks again. Every generation must decide, do we look away, or do we confront the truth? So the moral of this story is simple, but urgent evil does not always end with punishment. Sometimes it ends with silence, and when justice fails, memory must take its place. We tell these stories to remind the world that betrayal does not fade just because the traitor grows old. Justice is not always delivered in time, but truth always remains. And as long as the truth is spoken out loud, no criminal truly escapes. Because a nation that forgets its past repeats its deepest wounds, and history does not